When humanity joined the galaxy at large, one of the many things we didn't expect was their willingness to exhibit their military strength. Though they keep their own planetary defenses a very closely guarded secret, the ability to train with the humans should give everyone some sort of insight into their capabilities, a little bit more than we already know. This will be information that could possibly be used as a later date. A battle line, also known as a human company, were told they would be training at a location somewhere known as Fort Drum. Yes, we know it is funny that humans name things after musical instruments. Most of the battle line believed they would be sitting around listening to what the humans call music, that strange, rhythmic, whatever they call it. However, all of them were wrong. Upon landing, everyone realized that the weather was not going to be nice with them. It was cold, and there was a strange white precipitation coming down. Everyone wondered what was going on, and pretty soon they were sent to what was known as a central issue facility, where they received a plethora of equipment and clothing. Although, since all this was designed for humans, some alterations were required, especially for extra appendages like the tail on the reptilian inass that the humans call lizards. However, if a human gets angry, they will actually use a strange slang term, as they say it, called iguana. It is of note that most human soldiers do not know what that means in other languages. So this made many of the soldiers from the battle line simply chuckle and sometimes laugh out loud. Many expected the weather to lighten up, as the humans say, but unfortunately the weather at said post was frightful. Over a meter of frozen dihydrogen monoxide littered the ground. Normally, this would hamper all movements, bringing everything to a stop. However, humans just seemed to carry on like it was not even a concern, but a simple inconvenience. Once outfitted in what they call the company area with all this additional human equipment, which was mainly clothing, we were instructed by the human's battalion executive officer that we could not wear the protective clothing. Instead, it must be carried in a device that they call a rucksack. It is also of note that this officer, known as Battalion XO, would not be joining us. He would remain behind in a very warm shelter. It is also of note that the human soldiers that were going with us were visually upset, to the point of cursing and screaming and stupidly trying to break a wall with their fists. More than once they stated how the officer just liked to watch real men suffer, and saying things like, "It's no wonder nobody cares about West Point graduates." However, it is of note that the translation is unclear of this meaning. The battle line and the human company were transported by vehicle only 50% of the way to the training location before the vehicles abruptly stopped and everyone was ordered to disembark. Those in charge were clearly irritated at this situation as the weather got quite cold, not to mention there was the additional wind, and the treatment of their subordinates in this type of weather was clearly irritating them. Most of the battle line were already showing signs that the temperature, being negative 44 degrees Fahrenheit before the wind chill, was affecting them in bad ways. Many of them were glad that they actually snuck some of their heating packs inside their clothing. One of these NCOs that was out there yelled at everyone to hurry up and get off the vehicles. As everyone did, it was clear that these NCOs were not exactly happy. There was no consensus. There was no officer anywhere at the time. They were still inside the vehicle, and the NCOs were in charge of making sure that we made our way to the training area. We wondered how they would do this. Would it be in parade formation? Would we do one of those K dances that they talk about? To our surprise, as many of these NCOs argued, one suddenly screamed out and yelled at all of us, "You're not going to run alone, but you will run to the range. And when you get there, I want you in level 7 as soon as possible." This seemed as a contradictory order, and when the one in charge of the battle line aired his concern to all the NCOs, they all said something similar to the phrase of, "I don't give a shit. Run!" pointing with all their digits on their hand down the road. These ones in charge, usually the elders of the group, ran with the battle line and made sure we could all reach the range, as they call it, and made sure that all the clothing was placed on us correctly. Once inside their extreme cold weather gear, tensions seemed to lift, as this cold weather gear, as they call it, is extremely good, even giving additional heater packs for those that are not homeothermic. With the issue of dealing with the cold and the weather, all the wind coming into our faces, everybody simply got to work. After a very long day of, as the humans put it, trudging through the snow at the known distance range, some food finally arrived. It was supposed to be hot and when we first got there, but now it was late and it was cold. However, it was food, and it seemed as though the humans just got ready to eat immediately, not caring that the food, even though prepared in their ways, was simply cold. It should be of note that a few of the NCOs would argue who should eat first. The same human that told everyone to run was adamant that the subordinates must eat first. This human actually embarrassed all that did not follow this rule. Even other humans said that this rule was important, and note that when asked, the humans would always reply, "It's the right thing to do." When pressed even more, when there was brought up that the command must be able to command theirs and must have a full stomach and must be able to get their fill before others eat, many of these NCOs snapped and said, "You never take from your men." This was seen as extremely aggressive, as one of these NCOs actually grabbed a hold of one of the sergeants from the battle line and actually raised him right off his talons. This practice was not questioned twice. The Xenos of the battle line were not exactly pleased that they would not be actually returning to their starting point. Instead, they would be staying in a strange metal hut that actually did have some heat to it. However, not nearly enough that everybody would like. They liked it even less as they realized that there was not enough room inside this particular facility for everyone. Especially when you put in factors like the Ilnatu, which flick their tail constantly at night, whether or not they dream or not. And if they did this, not only would the tail be laying across someone next to them, but the constant flicking would keep them awake all night. There was also the Thine, which need to spread their wings when they sleep. Their wings tend to droop sideways and then spread out. This helps them extend their plumage, and with extra air inside the plumage, it actually keeps them warmer at night. There was a little bit of question back and forth, and in order to accommodate everyone, the humans decided that they would actually sleep outside of these warming houses. When asked how they would be able to maintain their body heat, they mentioned that they would simply curl up inside of a bag for fecal air. Note that this is likely a mistranslation. The next morning, the battle line left the shelter to locate the humans for additional training and their long walk back to the starting point. This is where we find the reason why humans are considered so dangerous and so scary. As the battle line walked around in at least a half a meter of fresh Terran snow, they could actually not see any humans. No tracks, no nothing. There was nothing there. As the battle line began to stretch out wider and wider in all of the areas, a yell came out from the foliage. "On your feet!" This simple phrase seemed to be almost like a magic spell, as humans that had frozen the previous night began to rise like those undead creatures from human cinema. The humans seemed to rise slowly from the ground, groaning in ways that seem as though air was passing over dead vocal cords. There was a whisper on occasion of cursing that could be heard in the cacophony of groans that came across. These strange forms began to sit up all around the battle line as they were spread out in the area. Even some started to sit up amongst the line as those reanimated humans seemed to reach out from the middle of nowhere as those strong 5 digits seemed to push their way forward through the snow. The entire scene made many try to use their weapons. However, they found out very quickly that they had no live ammunition, and all you could hear was the constant click, click, click as they tried to fire their weapons. This is when the battle line heard the sounds of zippers being opened. From their cocoons, the humans rose slowly, all of them moving slow and groaning as they got to their feet. A few of the humans seemed to climb out of shelters that were hidden inside the snow, and even a small portion slid out of cocoons that seemed to be hanging between 2 pieces of foliage, completely unnoticed by the battle line. Seeing the humans rise from their state traumatized the entire battle group. Most froze in fear, not the cold, but simply terrified. Some lost control of their bodily functions and put the smell of ammonia and feces in the air. A couple fainted out of just fear. And then the sounds of a few humans twisting their bodies to reset their endoskeleton made a few vomit uncontrollably from the disgusting sound. There were several lessons learned from training with the humans. The first lesson was that human soldiers respect each other and will protect each other to the end, regardless of whatever orders they're given. 2. Human officers, at least some of them, have little to no concern of the welfare of their subordinates. One should note that at least the coalition military has this in common with the humans. 3. Humans care for the well-being of their allies as much as their own, noted by when they let the battle line consume food first, not knowing if there would be enough left, and making sure the subordinates ate first as well. The next point, human soldiers can handle the absolute worst conditions known to the coalition military. They handled the cold and the heat and everything else and barely said anything. However, the look on their faces, once you learned what to see, showed their discontent, but they just seemed to, as they said, deal with it. Number 5, humans make sure that they're well fed. They're not nice on an empty stomach, which was noted by these NCOs, most of which who did not get anything to consume, ended up reaching for any type of what they called poke-a bait inside their own gear. This was the only nutrients they had. It kept them going, but one could easily see that once they had an empty stomach, they got very, very tough to deal with. The 6th point is that humans are nightmare fuel when they reanimate, especially when they have not received their morning stimulant in some sort of strange bean water. It is recommended that all coalition military be briefed on this before they end up going into shock like so many others during this training mission. The 7th and final point is never, ever, ever vomit into a human's fart sack. They will assure your extended residence inside a medical facility as the medics try to put all the pieces back. This ends the audio report given by Captain Nuts, former lieutenant of 11-14 Light Assault Battle Group, Battle Line 2, Right Flank, Contingent Leader. Hello everybody, this is Syntax. Thank you so much for joining me today on this short story. Before I go, I need to send out some special thank yous to a few of my supporters, and those will be MTF Guard, Erica Gem, Guardian Sage, Brian Kemp, Douglas Scarborough, SS Demon, Prozac and Pancakes, and Sir. Thank you all for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I'll see you on the next one. This is Syntax, punching out.